Buckeye fans probably recall the score, 31-24 double overtime. Think about it for a second. One of the great games in college football history, 31-24 double overtime. Yeah, the 2002-2003 national championship game against Miami. Okay, let's get to tonight. Buckeyes survive against Penn State. Nittany Lions dominated the second half for the most part, took it to overtime, had all the momentum you would think. Buckeyes prevailed on 4 possessions in overtime to win it in double overtime, 31-24. Let's run down the keys here because the Buckeyes dominated the first half. Running game doing very well. Ezekiel Elliott never broke free for any big runs, but 26 carries for 109 yards. And his longest run on the night was 12 yards, but he was moving for 6-8 yards per attempt in the first half against this Penn State defense, the number 1 rush defense in the Big Ten and the 6th rated rush defense in the country, giving up just 15 points per game as well. The competition not great, but Central Florida with a decent offense and Northwestern as well. Penn State, again, a top defense, and they showed us why in this game, specifically in the second half against the Buckeyes running game and the pass game. Ohio State dominated on defense, their best defensive performance of the season, even more so than the Rutgers rout or the Maryland game to a certain extent. So the Buckeyes led at 17-0. Curious at the end of the first half that Urban Meyer with the ball at the 40, his offense moving well, JT Barrett making the right decisions, had the ball at the 40 with about 50 seconds left in the first half. He went through this odd kind of shutdown mode, but they were still running play, still risking turning the ball over, but they were shutting down, and they had a chance to move it maybe 25, 30 yards for a field goal and make it 20-0. So still the Buckeyes led 17-0 at the half. Penn State couldn't run it in the first half, unlike Ohio State, 11 yards rushing for Penn State, and that Ohio State pass rush. The big advantage in this game for the Buckeyes is the great defensive line with Bosa and Washington and Bennett and company against that beat-up Penn State offensive line that's also ravaged because of scholarship reductions. We talked about it all week. The play of the game for Penn State in this one, Anthony Zettel. We talked about him as a force in the defensive middle for Penn State. We talked it in our pregame video segment. The interception for the touchdown. Poor read by JT Barrett. The rush, the blitz got right in his face, came right at him. He threw in the direction of the blitz. That's what he's supposed to do, but he threw it behind. Didn't see Zettel breaking back and playing coverage. Zettel, the big guy, took it all the way, beat Barrett to the end zone, tippy-toed his way in, made it 17-7. That completely changed the game. From then on, Penn State played a much better game than Ohio State, but the Buckeyes still played strong defensively, but the offense was shut down after that. JT Barrett did not have a strong game in this one. That pick was his first in 111 attempts, 12 for 19, 74 yards passing for an Ohio State offense that lit up Rutgers, lit up Maryland for 56 points each, lit up Cincinnati just like everybody else is for 50 points, and really throwing the ball well to the plethora of receivers we talked about, again, in our preview segment, talking about Devin Smith, Evan Spencer, Corey Smith, Michael Thomas, Dontre Wilson, but 12 completions out of 19 attempts for more alarming 74 yards. So the longest completion on this game for Ohio State, 14 yards. And Urban Meyer wants big plays, and he has recruited speed for the edge plays and for the one-on-one matchups downfield. Again, Elliott ran hard, 26 for 109, but credit the Penn State defense for not allowing anything more than 12 yards. Christian Hackenberg, again, we talked about it in the preview. Sophomore slump after such a great freshman campaign, but he is oh so talented. And when given the time and when allowed by the offensive game plan to get some time, and what that meant was quick throws in the second half. So hurried in the second half. He comes back in the first half. In the second half, comes back on a 31 of 49, 224 yards. 77 play drive when they had to have it, 19 play, very methodical drive from their own 9-yard line with 3 minutes left. Hackenberg took them all the way down the field, and Penn State scores the touchdown, or kicks the field goal. Took one shot at the end zone for the touchdown. I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive in going for the end zone to try to win the game because they got it in that 18-yard range. They finished up at the 14-yard line for the Sam Ficken 31-yarder. We go to overtime. So overtime for the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions at 17. You would think Penn State had all the momentum, and even more so when they took it 25 yards on the opening drive of overtime, score the touchdown. Hackenberg, again, very impressive on that drive, throwing the ball crisp and sharp and making the right reads and right decisions. JT Barrett, got to credit this kid. He bounced back. First, enormous road environment. Sure, they played at Maryland, they played at Navy, but nothing like 108,000 in the whiteout in Happy Valley. And JT Barrett put two of the biggest fakes on the read option that you could imagine. The first two plays of the Ohio State overtime, got it down inside the 5-yard line, and then he scored from there. So we've got a 24-24 game. And then the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty against Penn State was huge because it split the field from 25 to 12.5 yards for Ohio State. They took it in easily from there. It seemed like Penn State a bit deflated at that point. And then the Ohio State rush defense took control of the second overtime, the pass rush as well, and finally on the last play of the game, what you would consider most likely the best player on the field, Joey Bosa, caused the sack of Christian Hackenberg on a 4th and 6. Ohio State survives over Penn State 31-24 in double overtime. So what does this do for Ohio State in the polls? They didn't look that very impressive, but it's still a win. It's on the road against a decent Penn State team that now falls to 4-3 at 1-3 in the Big Ten. More importantly than that, then the polls are, of course, the perception of the College Football Playoff Committee. We will hear what they have to say after next week's games, or actually on Tuesday night, with Ohio State taking on Illinois next. It's still 2 weeks before the big showdown in East Lansing, Ohio State and Michigan State, for most likely the Eastern Division Championship to play possibly Nebraska, who knows, possibly Wisconsin. In the Big Ten Championship game, maybe Iowa will have to have something to say as well. But if the Buckeyes play like this against even the likes of Minnesota or Illinois, based on what those two teams have done recently, and Illinois showed us today, the Buckeyes could be beaten. This is a flawed football team. They have mistakes up front and the offensive line. They still have defensive backs that lose the football, as most defensive backs do. So Ohio State getting better, look better. This Penn State program, Nittany Lion fans, you have to be excited about James Franklin, excited about your team. Not necessarily this season, although you do have the postseason play in play. You can get there with a couple more wins. You're now at 4-3, and I expect Penn State to win some more games down the stretch. Ohio State fans, Penn State fans, let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.